Hi, boys and girls. Today I'm going to read to you about Rosa Parks, and this is Chapter 5 in our history book. Rosa Louise Parks was born in 1913 in Alabama. She grew up on a small farm with her brother, mother, and grandparents. Rosa lived during the time of legal segregation in the South. There, African Americans faced discrimination. They did not have the same rights as white people. Because of segregation, African Americans and white people did not go to the same schools, eat at the same restaurants, or sit in the same waiting rooms. When traveling by bus, African Americans were expected to sit in certain seats, and in movie theaters, they often had to sit in the balcony. Now, this is the case for all colored people, so not necessarily just for African Americans, but if you were Mexican American or if you were Asian, you would have to do the same thing. So this was not only for black African Americans, it was for all people of color. So we want to remember that. Let's keep reading. When Rosa was a little girl, she had to go to a school that was just for African American children. It was an old one-room schoolhouse that only held classes for 5 months each year. Far too often there weren't enough desks or school supplies for the students. Rosa noticed that buses took white children to a school nearby. When Rosa was 19, she married Raymond Parks. Raymond was involved in the movement to improve lives of African Americans. Rosa began to help too. So let's stop right there. And I want you to make your little web of Rosa Parks. And you can go ahead and put on there 1913 Alabama. That's where she was when she was born. And I'm going to put that on my book. Rosa Parks. And we're going to say 1913 Alabama. And I can say born in 1913 in Alabama. Okay, so we know that she was an African American and she faced discrimination. Now, let's go ahead and put here the word discrimination, because we heard that about Jackie Robinson, and it's something that he dealt with as well. And Miss Mary Bethune was also African American, and she dealt with discrimination. Discrimination is a word that is used when people of either different race or different religion or skin color, or for reasons that make you look different, when you are treated unfairly or unkindly because of those reasons of your skin color, race, religion, then, or your gender, then, which means if, for instance, like a woman couldn't vote, that was discrimination against a woman. To say that she can't vote because she's a woman. When people are treated differently because of something that makes them different, then that is called discrimination, when they are treated unkindly or unfairly. And that's what happened to Miss Rosa Parks. So now you know what discrimination is. So we're going to say here she faced discrimination. Okay? Let's keep reading. So when Rosa was 19, she married Raymond Parks. Then came the day that changed things forever. On a cold December evening in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks left work to set off to catch a city bus that would take her home. Rosa stepped onto the bus and took a seat just behind the whites-only section. Before long, all the seats on the bus were full, and some white people were left standing. Back then, the bus driver could tell African Americans to give up their seats to white passengers. The bus driver did just that. He told some African American people on the bus to give up their seats. All of them did, except for Rosa. When the bus driver said he would call the police if she did not move, Rosa quietly said, "You may do that." When he asked her one more time to stand up, Rosa replied by saying, "I don't think I should have to stand up." Well, before long, a police officer came and Rosa was arrested and taken to the police station. Later that night, she was released on bail, which means she had to pay a fine, pay money to get her out. Oh my goodness, so that's kind of brave of her. If she knew that she was going to get in trouble, but she knew what was right, and it was not right that they were treating her that way, making her get up out of her seat. So she got out of jail, and African Americans in Montgomery who normally rode the city buses decided to show their support for Rosa by protesting. Instead of using buses, they would walk. This kind of protest is called a boycott. Okay, so let's write down that word. That's a good word to learn. Boycott. Many African American women supported the boycott, which was led by a young man named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The boycott lasted 382 days. Without passengers to ride the city buses, the city couldn't afford to run the buses. Some white people supported the boycott too. Okay, so the way they boycotted was they boycotted 382 days. African Americans, I'm going to put AA for African American, stopped riding city buses. How did this affect the buses? Well, they lost money because then African Americans weren't paying for their bus tickets, so they lost. Oopsie, sorry about that. They lost money. Okay. On November 13th, in 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that it was against the law to make African Americans give up their seats. This was a great victory. Never again would an African American person have to give up their seats on the bus. So good. See, she was brave, she was courageous, and she stood up for what was right, and other people benefited from this. Now they can ride on the bus and not have to give up their seats. Rosa Parks' actions helped to start the civil rights movement. In fact, Rosa became known as the mother of the civil rights movement. She continued to work for civil rights her entire life. Rosa received many awards for her courage and her work, and she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1996 and the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor in 1999. So people I'm going to put here, she had courage. And she stood for civil rights. What she believed in was that people should be treated equally. Because of her bravery, all African Americans did not have to give up their seats on buses. Okay, so these are reasons that make her special, and she is known for her courage, and she even won medals because she stood up for what she believed in. And that's what we were learning about people that are good citizens, and the way they show their good citizenship is by caring about the rights that are to be given to all people and not just certain people. And when she saw that not all people were given the same rights, she felt like she needed to stand up and fight for her rights. And the way they did that was by a boycott. And that is, they stopped riding the bus for 382 days, and the city buses realized how important the African Americans were, because they began to lose money because they were not buying bus tickets, and that really made an impact. And so for that reason, the Supreme Court ruled that it was against the law to make Americans give up their seats. And so now all people of color can sit where they want to. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope you have time to look at the video that I've sent for Rosa Parks. I miss you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.